Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the webinar on demystifying rural marketing during COVID times, opportunities and challenges. We have with us two esteemed guests for the day. I'll introduce them to you in a while. Let me just talk a bit about the IHMR University. IHMR is a specialized research university in management research, postgraduate education and training in the health sector. Over the last 35 years, we have been carving our niche into the area of hospital and health management. We also offer programs in MBA Pharmaceutical Management, MBA Rural Management, and Master of Public Health from Johns Hopkins University. We also collaborate with the leading world organizations like World WHO, United Nations, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and a lot of other training and research institutes. We have a School of Development Studies where we offer program into the area of rural management. And today we thought, let us give you a bit more exposure into the world of rural marketing and how the experts are talking and leading into this area. Rural India is the enigma code, which we as marketers have to crack. And thus we have to look through the 7 veils. Companies can thrive entirely on rural markets. It is a difficult market for those who see rural India through the prism of urban market. Rural India is not only about agriculture and the opportunities lie beyond the traditional agricultural sector. There are now new areas of economic endeavor and the non-traditional village industries are the sources of non-agricultural income. The rural-urban divide is slowly but inexorably vanishing. Rural markets have more buying capacity than ever before. We need to understand the convergence between rural and urban area, evolution of rural areas over the last few decades, current priorities and challenges, and their implication on regulators, businesses, marketers, developmental agencies, and other stakeholders engaging with rural India. I believe discovering opportunity in rural market to tap and unlock them. Challenges of scaling up and partnerships are the way ahead. The whole world is passing through a challenging time. It perhaps once in a century or even couple of centuries, condition in India is no different. Let us take a deep dive to understand what the market is passing through and what is the expert's opinion. So in today's webinar, we're going to talk about few points, which includes how rural market has evolved during COVID times. We're going to kind of demystify the rural marketing. We'll understand the opportunities and challenges in the rural market and what's the road ahead for us. The expert for this evening with us today is Professor Anirban Chaudhary. He has more than 20 years of expertise in brand advisory and integrated marketing communications, a gold medalist in MBA from Jadavpur University, Calcutta, and strategic management from IIM Calcutta. His breadth of experience covers media, research, financial markets, brand consulting, and of course, strategic planning with organizations like Statesman, Malayala Manorama, SHCIL, Shining Strategic Identity, MAA Boxel, IMRB International, TNS, DDB Mudra, FCB Ulka, J. Walter Thompson, and so many such organizations. He's also been the member of the Rural Marketing Association of India in the past, and he currently teaches marketing at the Great Lakes Institute of Management, Gurgaon. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
Now, the other expert who is in rural marketing stalwart, Mr. Benjamin Matthews. He is currently head of strategy Mart. He has worked with Xerox India and P&G prior to joining Mart. It's been last 16 years he has been working with the Mart in the rural hemisphere. He has to his credit several low-cost innovations, including rural distribution model, low-cost ultrasound machine, and many more. He has worked on the long-term strategy to create viable service delivery for IT-based kiosk marketing over 25,000 spread in rural areas of 8 states. He has built the first fortified snack category for beverage measure by way of product design, brand building, behavior change communication, and market development. Benjamin, sir, thank you so much for joining us. So here we have two experts, one from the industry and one from the education background. And they're gonna talk really gonna share really interesting insights this evening. So, sir, can we start with the question answers?
Sure.
My first question to Benjamin, sir. How do you classify rural India?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. I mean, setting the context for this webinar would be really great. So let me just try and come with the classification of how the rural looks like. For many of the organizations, corporate sectors, government, everybody has a certain kind of classification. Say, for instance, the durables industry says that anything less than 50,000 population would be rural India. Similarly, NABARD says that less than 10,000 population would be rural India. But in principle, what we consider rural has not fundamentally changed in the last 70 years. And that is based upon three major definitions. The definition says that 75% of the male population is engaged in agriculture or allied activities. Per square density of population does not exceed 400, and there should not be any municipality or above. If all the three conditions are met, then that exactly in India is what we call rural, which means to say that we are exactly talking about 648,000 villages. Beyond this, there will be district blocks, and then there will be urban centers, so and so. So that's how kind of rural and the urban divide on in terms of classification looks like.
That sounds interesting. Thank you so much to be precise. I know, like when people talk about rural India, there's so many definitions. In fact, a lot of books talk about various definitions. So it's very nice for students to hear that. Anibas, my next question is for you. What, according to you, is the new normal for rural India?
Well, I think new normal has become the new phrase that all of us are using in every context. I think, there is a new normal that gets, created every time, not just now, because things are continuously evolving. But specifically with the COVID lockdown and the huge amount of migrants going back, there are certain probably things which might not be like what it was. So even before this period, there have been one emerging trend that many have been noticing, which is probably reverse migration, especially with technology becoming a great enabler. We might see that to continue, or probably many of the migrants not immediately thinking of coming back, and so which would influence the rural, let me say, socio-cultural context, the economy, and that's, I think, one of the big new normals that we are expecting. In fact, some of the opportunities also lie with that, and that's something that we can discuss further today. But to me, that's something which is going to be probably the most important new normal, apart from probably the health consciousness and things going up, because people do know today that there is a pandemic on and they need to be careful about it. But
do you really think that's going to impact the rural India?
You're talking of the migrants who have gone back? New normal? Yeah, obviously, because you see a large part of urban centers that we know, and I'm using urban centers because they could be towns or cities close by, have been depending on a large rural population helping them. Now there's a time where we have internationally been speaking about offshoring or outsourcing. There are many possibilities that can actually come up. People have experimented with those kind of things. For example, there are multiple cases in India about rural BPO, but can that get a scale today? Maybe that's an opportunity for some to look at. So there are opportunities in that new normal itself, and I strongly believe that there would be changes, because a large part of those population may not like to go back because of whatever experience that they would have had, right? Or probably some of them were thinking of that reverse migration trend, but this was a kind of nudge for them to go back.
Absolutely. Very true. Benjamin, sir, can we segregate rural India into two parts, developed rural and rest of the rural India?
In a sense, yes. I mean, fundamentally, you say that it's an urban or a rural. As I mentioned in the definition, that anything with that kind, all the three definitions, really work out, then that place is called as rural. But in terms of economic stature, income and other things, I think you can definitely divide the underdeveloped rural, the developing rural, and the developed rural. For example, say Punjab, Haryana, Kerala, these states, some of the states may be really called as the developed rural. The developing rural may be Maharashtra, Gujarat, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka. These are which are the developing rural side of it. And you had the earlier Bimaru states and other things that you continue to say. So those are something that we still say that they are underdeveloped, which also would mean that the ratio of the urban to rural will keep on changing during these districts. So fairly developed rural, say, let's take an example of, say, Tamil Nadu. It is now 46% urbanized. Okay, so that means there's 64% only rural compared to, say, UP, which would be, say, 80% rural and 20% urban. So these streams will keep on changing, and we have to understand that our states is like big area, big countries, and each have an economy of its own. So the implementation of rural programs, economics, and other things pave the way for all these economic factor to put into place. And this variation will definitely be there going forward as well. So this is how we would kind of put things into a kind of a basket.
So do you also think that, when we talk about underdeveloped rural in today's context versus developed rural by the government, when we are talking about the different economic condition, different, location and different set of facility and infrastructure available to these states? I was talking about when you're talking about classification like underdeveloped rural and developing rural states, when we are talking about that these states are different in terms of infrastructure, the geographical conditions, the support provided by the government. What sort of things can be done by the government or as an institutions or organizations, who can help these underdeveloped states to grow further?
Okay, I mean, it's not a very straightforward answer that you can really get whether the government can do. The government will more or less do everything on a kind of a neutral platter. That means what is available to, say, UP would be similarly available to, say, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, or Maharashtra, so and so forth. But it is largely dependent upon the state government's initiative to drive many of these things. Okay, therefore, in terms of the industry and the changes in the localized scenario, what you see right now. So can there be an initiative to really drive this underdeveloped rural? There is already there. I mean, there are huge amount of programs that are very specifically targeted to, say, Bihar, UP West, UP East scenario, MP. There are farmer programs. There are electricity getting onto the village level, the LPG connections. So you can see those things, in a better. But it doesn't mean that it's disproportionately allocated to some other states and not proportionally allocated to a higher state. It will be more general. The thing that we need to really understand is that we are a diverse country. We are ethnically diverse, culturally diverse. The way we execute things changes. So there is a phenomenal amount of change that you can see by states. Now variations will be there. And that is the crux of our development scenario. So can somebody, your last question was, can somebody really input? I mean, the choices will lie with those people of what is their agenda, where do they want to intervene, and how the things they need to do on the ground will pave the way for, the choices of the markets or the choices of the states. So if I want to alleviate poverty, I may go to Bihar, Jharkhand, Orissa. If I want to really create a farmer producer organizations and bring up agriculture, I may go to Maharashtra, Karnataka. So the agenda starts to become more granular, more specific. So it's not a general scenario.
Absolutely. Anirban sir, when we talk about some of the terminologies we hear, urban India, Gramin Bharat, So do you really think can Gramin Bharat make India fly?
Well, I think that's been one of the brightest, beacon of hope for India in the current times. If you have
Absolutely.
been, looking at the projections that have been there for India and the economic revival, or probably tiding over the current situation, agri is playing a big role. The monsoon has been good. The expectation of the crops have been, better, and hence there is a huge contribution that agri is making. But I would not limit my, let me say, reliance on rural only to agri, but I also think that the resources that are available in rural today, in fact, like what Benjamin was referring to, was focused on the governmental aspect, but I think there is a lot of scope for private partnerships with rural
Yeah.
youth. That's a huge opportunity today. In fact, in a lighter note, we have seen the kind of income the rural youth were making out of TikTok, right?
Absolutely.
Whether it's on or off, that's a different issue. But to me, that gives us the kind of probably creative talent that's available there. Who was consuming? It's wrong for us to assume that the urban India was not looking at those platforms. In fact, data shows that there has been huge penetration of that in even urban India. So I'm saying that the untapped potential of rural is a great opportunity for us. And some of the infrastructural things are improving. There is a mandate, or at least, intent to have, energy and, clean cooking fuel by 2022, right? There is a lot of change that we have seen happening in terms of housing as well as the road infrastructure. So those have brought in a lot of connect between urban and rural, and there is a lot of exchange happening. And let me also put this very clearly: when we are talking about development or we are talking about resurgence, it's not about rural falling urban. There are areas where rural is going to lead as well. It doesn't need to become urban as well. So that's something which gives me a lot of hope that whatever you call it, Gramin Bharat, and when we are saying Gramin, it's not typically just the village. We keep using this other definition of urban or urban in many
Urban,
contexts.
right.
That's something also is important for us to keep in mind as we are talking about the growth trajectories.
Absolutely. Benjamin sir, export shutdown, job cuts, supply chain delays were some of the key concerns affecting rural markets during the lockdown. Right? What are the visible and invisible impact on the rural market during the COVID time?
Okay, that's a pretty intense technical question that you ask. Okay, I'll have to kind of give you some numbers so that you really look at the layers properly, and then translate your question of that. There was a logistics delay, there was issues, and so on. So we need to really understand how and where it practically happened and what was the reasons behind it.
Absolutely.
So if you really break up the 648,000 villages into, say, population strata wise, okay, so you have 0 to 500 population villages, then 500 to 1,000, 1,000 to 2,000, 2,000 to 5,000, and 5,000 plus. I mean, you have grades like that. In each of these, numbers are the villages and the number of people, households that live in it. So if you look at the top 20% of the villages, which is between 2,000 population and 5,000 population and 5,000 plus population, account for 20% of the villages only, but account for 50% of the rural population. This 50% of the population is extremely well connected by roads. The logistics is fairly good. Okay. The retail outlets do get service, except for if there is a severe lockdown, then you can't reach out the logistics in any manner. Your everything has got stopped. But the revival also takes place much faster, and it has come back. So in terms of the 60-70% of the world scenario, it's kind of come back. Now, your second question is, has it really disrupted? Yes, it does disrupted the wholesale market, where the lower rank of the population villages, where the retail used to get the material from the wholesale, that has got completely cut off. I mean, uh, reaching out, the further it is from a town, the lower the population of the village. So the throughput is lower. It is very difficult to reach, so and so forth. So if you look at less than 1,000 population villages up to say 200 population villages, I think there's a serious disruption in terms of retail outlets. Inventories have significantly gone down. The logistics right now has not come back very easily, but it will improve. The point is, the ease of transportation is what it will take a little while. And in principle terms, the impact of the COVID definitely is there, especially state border. State borders have been something that really made the problem. Second, also is that if you look at just simple examples, that at a toll bridge on the road, if there are 100 vehicles passing through in 1 hour, in practically that came down to almost 20.
Yeah.
Okay, so to getting back, we know that there is a problem, but getting back is also going to look at all the district indicators. And ek district ne bol diya, I mean, you said that there are a high number of people and the borders are sealed, then your logistics again gets hit. So we will live in this. We will have to live with COVID, and in this scenario, it will be an on and off kind of switches, which will really work this out in the permutation and combination that will come through. But having said that, it's not a bleak scenario. It's come back fairly. At least 50% of the population and the majority of the outlets, the services have started to come back with a lot of limitations and other things. The others will also slowly, inch towards the replenishment cycle. So by the end of say December, first quarter of next year, you should be able to bring back whatever was the numbers and other things that we were seeing pre-COVID scenario. So that's a layout of the whole thing.
Hopefully, that should happen, and that should happen really.
Yeah,
really
it
fast.
should. It should. I mean, as Anirban mentioned, that the numbers that is coming through is really good, and I can quote some numbers and it will give you. See, at any moment, if we take 2.7 trillion as India's economy, at least 1.3 to 1.4 trillion comes from rural, in principle, which is about 50 to 53% of it. And even with that, I mean, agriculture is big, then horticulture is as big as agriculture, both in terms of value and volume. Not to forget that there is a milk industry, which is 6,60,000 crores. Every 100,000 liters of milk adds 10,000 employment. Okay, and to be fair, I mean, everybody talks about Amul. Amul for this entire industry is only 5% of it. Okay, so we are real followers of Amul. I am not denying that fact, but practically as an industry, that's so big that Amul is just a small percentage of it. So, and then you have poultry, which added almost like 3.5 million employment. Neither the corporate sector added, nor the agriculture added, but poultry added almost 3.5 million employment in the last 5 years. So, if you really work out these numbers, the rural scenario is fairly different. Yes, COVID has its problems, but the limitations has been not that severe as we had seen in the urban. So it was much more easier. Therefore, the chances of revival is also faster.
Glad that you're so optimistic about it.
It is all the numbers are speaking. I mean, initial numbers, as Anirban said, the Mandi arrivals has been 92%.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's the key indicator for a positive sign. मतलब बारिश गिरती है तो सबका दिल खुश हो जाता है ना. That's a kind of positive sentiment which the agriculture brings to the table. So that has been good. Kharif season has gone up with a 10% higher scenario. Input sellers have gone higher. Tractor numbers are there. Two-wheeler numbers are coming back on track. So what is principally we want? We are moving. We will.
Absolutely. In fact, we have seen a lot of product innovations happening during this COVID time. When you're talking about Amul, I just remembered Amul launched kind of variants, right, from a haldi doodh to,
Yes.
turmeric ice cream to immuno bread, and a lot of this again coming from rural India. So, Anirban, do you think it's a new opportunity for the rural market? The COVID has brought new opportunity for the rural market?
Of course, as I said, and it is at multiple levels. So, for example, beyond agri, horti is one. Fruits, I'm saying there's a lot of focus on, let me say, immunity building, natural produces. And fortunately, as a country, we have a lot of them growing naturally for us, right?
Okay.
So it's not just for domestic consumption. There are opportunities today for us to actually have different, let me say, forms of that as well. Not just as raw produce, but the processed produce business is one big area. There is opportunity to tap these by leveraging the FPOs or the organizations that already are there, right? One needs to, I'm not saying it will automatically happen, but as you ask opportunity, these are areas on which we probably one need to focus and see how you can leverage it, bring in more, focus in their working to tap this opportunity. The other big option available is the large, youth population who probably could be those who have been in, other urban places, and they have certain skills, they have some exposure. All you need to do is create, livelihood projects which, leverage the local natural resources. In fact, I don't know how many of us have actually noticed, as you step out with all your physical distancing precautions, there are so many new, let me say, tags that you see today in groceries, right? It's not just, the ones that we have been familiar with, which means, the production, the demand has gone up. FMCG is one, area where consumption has gone up. And we are seeing more and more people, trying to make good of that opportunity by setting up new manufacturing processes. So I think there are opportunities galore with this, and especially rural being rich with resources, both the natural resources as well as the human resources. That's what is the opportunity for one.
Do you also think it's time for leveraging vocal for local in rural India?
Yeah, and that's happening. If you actually look at, during this period of time, after I think the first month or so, where probably the multinational, brands, and I'm right now speaking in the context of FMCGs, right? If you see, they have been, at the forefront of talking about the precautions that one need to take, right? So the two major hand wash brands have been talking about how you need to be washing hand frequently and things like that, obviously. But post that, you see the Daburs, you see the Patanjalis, you see the, ITCs, coming up with products or variants. In fact, for example, look at any part of the country. I'm saying whether you're looking at Imami in the East coming up with Zandu and its variants, or BoroPlus coming up with, sanitizers. So there is a domestic demand. There is a natural fit, cultural fit with the products and variants that are easily that can manufacture, and that makes it easier for many of these local companies to be more vocal. So that matches up with that context of vocal for local. And obviously the MNCs are also trying to match that up. Many of the MNCs are as local as we believe them. So I don't think in a large part of India doesn't believe that Bata is from Europe.
I'm not willing to believe Maggie for that matter, or Cadbury for that matter. They've become so much part of our life that they've become the national.
Yeah, that's true. But I think for the local, manufacturers or the, there's a huge opportunity. Food and beverage is one big consumption, chunk of any, culture.
Absolutely.
Right.
Benjamin, sir, what according to you are the market sentiments and concerns in present time?
Okay, that's again a very interesting question. No, not a very linear answer, straightforward answer. So just give you an answer in three different points. The
Sure.
first and the foremost thing is that there is a positive sentiment at the rural level. I think that is very much imbibed into the sentiment there itself, and it will continue. But the point is that if I break the entire economic cycle into 2-3 parts, as we really call it. So if I take say 1.2 1.3 trillion dollar economy for the rural, and this is what naturally the numbers would be, agriculture contributes about only 27% of it. But services, which is the leading one, which is the single biggest employer, which is the single biggest driver of the entire consumption and the income scenarios, has definitely seen some amount of hit. So coming from that point of view, the apprehensions are: is my work going to come back? Is my Manrega saw about 42% more enrollment? Is the states going to give me labor work, or are they going to lay out this scenario? How am I going to work out the horticulture scenario? What is my labor scenario? So a lot of these things is what the apprehensions that you see at the rural level. And to my mind, it's pretty humongous from a macro perspective, but at some point these will start to subside with the realistic answers that is going to come through. So there is some directions. I mean, government has done a fair amount of bit of it. Other sectors will start employing, but the crux will still lie with whether the pre-COVID scenarios of the engagement of labor, the income, the employments, are they really going to come back? And that's what will be the single biggest question of the apprehension that comes back to many people who are talking. Otherwise, I think markets will open. The question simply is coming like, I mean, do I get the same price for my aloo this year or not? Or is my kharif going to be the same price? Or is my wheat going to be the same price? Or is a cooperative going to buy the milk? So those questions will be inevitable questions. I mean, it will be there. But the crux, I think, is, as we see, is that the service industry need to come back, and that is the sheer driving force of the economy that you have seen growing in the last 1 or 2 decades. I mean, that's the bit of it.
That's good. I mean, I think these positive sentiments are very important, that people will understand that, time is changing, and I think this is also time that shall pass.
Yeah. To that extent, I think you're right. I mean, I'm just combining Anirban's point of view also into this, is that we also talk about migration and other things, but in practical scenarios, the urban migration has been almost down to 0.3% in the last 1 decade. So, so the fact is that, I mean, we are a dichotomy of countries now. We have a tribal ministry which has only say 2.27 million people. Okay, and we have a ministry there. We have a 120 million migrant workers, and we don't have a ministry for it. It's as simple as that. I mean, that's the kind of scenario that we live in.
Or no, law or legal,
no law,
system
no
for
legal,
it.
No structures for it.
Yeah,
that's the dichotomy.
One of the students is writing that, he's from Bihar, and he's saying that there is already a lot of migration again happening back to Delhi. People have started going back to Delhi.
Yeah. Some would obviously go back. That's true. But there would be many probably will not, and will wait till they find something, stable in the, current context. And there is opportunity at both ends. In fact, I don't know, I'm sure it's been in other cities as well. Like, one of the radio stations in Delhi NCR have been running a job portal on their, radio platform, because they have a job platform, and they are claiming that they're going to give some thousands of jobs to people who had lost it during COVID. Now that's a very interesting, approach, because obviously there are people who want to come back, and there are people who probably are looking for people to help them in their units, and that model probably is interesting to replicate in some of the smaller towns, which are part of our urban as well.
Absolutely. So my next question is to you. how marketers are mitigating the risk and taking measures to combat with this pandemic.
So I think there's a lot that's happening.
I mean, just for the benefit of the students, if you can talk about some stories, some examples which they can really relate to and talk about.
So if you look at, I think there is one area where most of the most, as you refer it to the students, one of the things that we always see very tangibly in front of us are the FMCG companies, and I think the experimentation that has happened in terms of distribution and the supply chain management during this COVID time has been remarkable. In fact, Coca-Cola, for that matter, has been one which has been written about using those, CSC, the computer service centers that's been there in the, rural or the small towns, have been leveraged to become, distribution points. So that's something which is a little innovative. So, trying to let me say, create livelihoods by leveraging these supply points and make them into village level entrepreneurs is obviously something that we have seen. We have seen new products that have come into play, especially in hygiene area. The discussions around hygiene has gone up. Even during the Independence Day, the Prime Minister emphasized on the feminine hygiene part. And there are a lot of products today. That's a category which I personally believe is not going to be 2 or 3 brand territory. There are many local brands that we have. For that matter, I particularly have been very closely associated with 2 of them, Nine and Puri. If you are from North India, you would have seen many of these products around and stuff. So I think a lot is actually coming up in the context of this situation that we are in. So whether it's product development, whether it's new rituals, whether it is about new let me say business processes like the distribution system that we are talking of, or rituals in the sense of the online purchases that has taken large increase in the current context. So those I would say are very clearly telling us that things are changing. Some of those habits might stay back, or some of those models like hybrid models are going to stay, and we are going to see how more and more from a rural context, these VLEs that we are talking about is a very interesting area for businesses to actually explore. There are platforms that have got created where non-competing brands are coming together and creating a supply chain, right? So that they can mitigate the risk as well as the cost of getting into rural. So one of the things I would probably like to say that rural has always been very, very attractive, but probably there are inherent inhibitions that have been there, which probably has not pushed many of the brands to go the whole hog. So this effort of creating a common platform probably mitigates one such inhibitions that has been there. So things are changing in a very, very interesting way.
But I was just wondering, say, for example, when we are talking about hygiene, if the COVID is over, do you think it's going to stay the same, or the behavior of the people will change again and they'll back to the normal life? Like I remember when post-lockdown, we started going to office, we were so, concerned about health and hygiene, and we've been using disinfectants, sanitizers, lot of things. But I think the consumption pattern has again declined. So especially when we are talking about rural area and opportunities for the entrepreneurs, do you think it's going to stay in the same capacity or it's going to mellow down?
See, some part of that would stay. So one may not use a sanitizer, but you don't need a sanitizer. Soap and water is good enough.
Water is more.
So as long as you're washing your hand, before you eat, something that has been ingrained, but people probably often forget. Probably people will be more cautious about that. in terms of, even small eateries might have a wash basin. Yeah, I'm saying, so those are the small changes I would expect to come in, stay for longer than what we believe that's been there. I am not sure if people will not go back to hugging each other. They may, but probably, will keep on the mask for some time. But yes, some of the habits I am expecting, and especially being, let me say, mindful of the hygiene requirements. So one of the areas which I'm not sure, and I am pretty open to, a debate, discussion, or a conjecture on that, is whether, pan chewing Indians will stop spitting. That's a big area to explore.
Yeah. That's a wonderful area to explore.
Not sure. Seriously, not sure. Forget about rural India. I mean, that's the problem.
No, not rural. I'm saying India as a whole. Yeah.
India.
Yeah, but I completely support Anibal's point of view. No, I just wanted to add a few more points in this entire context. Is that see, COVID came and it came with a scare. Okay, it came with a scare, and that's how our mental blocks and other things actually trajectoried into the habits and the scenarios that we are kind of following it up and pushing the agenda. However, in the real fact of the scenario, post-COVID scenario, that doesn't seem to be the stuff of the part. And as the scares and other things start to subside down, you will definitely see some of the initial habits may let go. As you said, will we hug again? I think going to be a longer game. Will we still continue to wash our hands? I think that may be ingrained much harder into the sentiment to go ahead. So there are things that will get ingrained, and with every crisis and everything, there are few subsets of the things that get ingrained into our psyche, and then we move on. But this very thing is very clear that, I mean, even at the rural level, I was there at the field last week only, that everybody said we'll have to live with it. Okay, so there is no scope of the elimination and it will go away with a vaccine and everything. That is going to be a longer game to play. So as people people internalize the scenario, this is how the reactions may fall off.
Absolutely. So do you also see impact of online shopping increased in rural India? And the consumption of data?
I can definitely bet on the data part. I mean, on an average, see, there are 460 million mobile phones in rural, if I go for the active scenarios, and out of which about 215 million mobile phones are smartphones. Okay, and it is increasing. The low end category definitely is increasing. That means to say that by the time you're really moving on this entire thing, your data consumption is significantly moving on, whether it is Facebook, as Anilvan mentioned, Facebook, TikTok and other things. I mean, data is very well entrenched. WhatsApp is big. I mean, these are areas that social apps are big in rural as well. But in saying that, will COVID push this agenda? I think we have to look at the consumption hierarchy very clearly. So if you look at entertainment, is a big game to play. And in that sense, the moment entertainment comes onto a smaller device, your data consumption goes up. And that's a big factor, by far, whatever you see at the rural level as well. YouTube, TikTok, Facebook videos, these are all things that is a consumption scenario. So yes, the market is there and it's going to push ahead. The only thing is COVID has just put a small barrier in between. So it will take a little time to come back. And then we are back to the normalcy scenario.
Just a point. Yeah. So I'd add on the digital bit. Interestingly, some of those education or learning as a area, in spite of all the digital divide and the challenges, but we see a lot of surge happening on online enrollments. For example, there are platforms which, for example, teach or tutor for state level or central examinations, right? Brands like Textbook and things like the Textbook. So those kind of platforms will have probably more acceptance in terms of data and digital usage in small town rural. India, because people currently have at least to an extent um, agreed to the fact, whatever be the reason, that you can learn through online.
That's correct.
So can I assume that you guys are saying that there's a lot of scope for marketers, right? And so there's a lot of job opportunities available for the youngsters into rural India.
So I'd take that and say that are there going to be scope for one to get engaged? Yes. But I think one of the issues that we often find, and especially I'm putting it in the context of MBA students and those who go in for management schools, we have a so let me say that given that I have spent some years in advertising, so there is a perception that advertising is all about living in a glam world and shooting the stars.
Yeah.
But when the reality hits, you spend night in a studio trying to work with the studio guy to make a layout. You realize that life is difficult. I think rural has been something like that for a long time for business school graduates. So it's good to talk about. It's a great project to put or flaunt on social platforms. But when the reality hits that Friday nights there is no disk to go, you start thinking, where have I come? So provided people are ready to take up the rural challenge, there are opportunities that are probably going to open up in the rural context from a marketing point of view. But one need to be very clear that one needs to love it. So I think rural marketing in a large context need to be driven by passion rather than a profession. Right? That's only when it will grow.
No, I would completely agree with Anirban. I think you mentioned it clearly that rural marketing is not without its hardships and without its pitfalls and difficulties. It's not an easy cup to play. And since it is not an easy cup to play, the only thing that drives you to do is the passion. If you're really imbibed into it, if you're really going for it, I think uh, everything will look so humongous at that level that you'll really feel that am I so small at that size. So that's a practical scenario of it. I mean, I can really vouch for it. When I entered rural marketing in the year 2001 2 after coming from PNG, I would be completely bewildered of what we are talking about. Okay, but why it takes a while to set in. And as Anirban mentioned, is there a passion? Then the sizes and the scope is really massive. And not to mention, I just missed out one of the points, and usually we don't come across this, is there is an equally big social sector as well. We always talk about the corporate sector only, and companies are there, but there are organizations like World Bank, DFID, USAID. These are running so massive programs, and the social sector also needs a significant amount of technically sound, passionate people who can really work on very, very pertinent problems, very pertinent thinking parts. Okay. Can you alleviate poverty? Is a question that somebody asked. So, as a marketer, do you have a solution around it? Is what the starting point would be. So there are multiple sectors in this area, not only corporate sector, but there is social sector. There is FPOs that Anirban mentioned. Is that can you drive a public-private partnership scenario where you can build a complete organization ground up? It's a company, okay, and you can really profit from it as well. So look at from a holistic perspective, and as mentioned, passion is the only key that you can keep it here.
Probably so true. A lot of students, when talk about it in terms of placement, so they say, "I've never been to rural India." As you rightly said, it takes time to set in, and they feel that they'll never be able to settle down there. And the jobs are always good in urban area. We'll not have quality of life. So there are a lot of such thoughts which are associated with the students at the back of mind, and they do not realize that they are missing out on an important opportunity. I mean, I would like you guys to reiterate and talk about that. Really, it's the time to rethink rural. for students, especially?
Anirban, you want to take it
No, no,
first?
no. Carry on, carry on.
It's a very difficult question to ask. And see, it's very easy for me to say that is rural big and you jump in. I'm saying because I already jumped in. And you have to go
You
with
have
the flow.
faced it, you have tested the,
Yep,
you've
I
swimmed into the
faced it,
water.
tested is the flow. And would that experience help other people to really look at it in a positive sense? I I think I could vouch for it in any manner. But the fact of the matter is, as long as you don't jump in and taste it,
You don't realize.
the background noise that you have is always urban. I mean, you will never be able to come out of it. So you need a place where you close off the scenario, jump in, and then taste it, and then build that passion. No, this is an area that I need to work, and it's not that it's not good paying. It's not that it's you don't have a life. I mean, I would feel that some of the life that I've lived in the rural is much better, going forward. But the fact is, it comes back to the same simple question: are we ready to take the risk? And if the risk is there, then it is also, as I say, my guru, Mr. Pradeep Kashyap, used to say, rural is not for flirting; it's for marriage. It's going to be long term.
I love it, seriously. So when you want to match, that's what the right partner, the right association, and which is gonna
That's
stay
correct.
for a long, long period of time.
Long
That's
period
true.
of. So there is
Um,
no shortcuts. There is no shortcuts
no
out there.
software.
And this is evident in the corporate sector as well. Those who has been invested in rural, has been there long term, are reaping the success. Those who has been short term has never gained.
I'm going to use this line. So, what message you have for students? Do you wish to tell them that it has a bright future? Some of them also want to know about salary and some kind of career prospects. So, if you can throw some light on them, they are putting that questions in chat box.
I don't know how to answer that. I mean, is there a career? Is there a? I mean, I've chosen a career for myself. It's a plain and simple. Okay, it's a direction that you take, and over time, the changes and the sectors and the subjects and the things that you do will keep on giving you that elevated direction that you're thinking of. Okay, it's not something that I really don't believe that it will that you will get into like a management trainee and come out as a CEO. That's a linear progression scenario. But if you really get in, you will understand economics, you will understand poverty, you will understand livelihood, the subject matter expertise that you really get, and then you really evolve into that scenario is what rural will make you. Okay, so I don't have an answer. I mean, Anirban could really give a better answer rather than me.
No, see, I'll put it this way. It's not just about rural. Any career, the let me say, you need to dirty your hand. You need to be,
That's right.
going through the hard work. Prove yourself. Be knowledgeable about that space, and only then it starts giving you returns. Which is with some multiplier effect, right? So. Whether you're working in an urban context, it doesn't assure you that you're going to be the CEO on the very first day, right? You need to go through that process, and that holds good for rural as well. Those who have any interest in rural, my suggestions from a student's point of view is spend the time of internship with rural projects, right? That's a good time for you to do, instead of taking it as few weeks off. uh, do real rigor. Test yourself out in the rural context on a good project, which will give you a very clear idea of whether your passion can be lived with all the long-term intensity that is required in that. And in terms of growth of prospects, social, rural are areas of growth. In fact, if you look at even at a global level, every company today is trying to let me say marry their business purpose to SDG. the Sustainable Development
Sustainable
Goals.
Development Goals.
And where do you see that happening? So you have the emerging and frontier markets, which largely geographically probably would be something that we call rural or are urban. And from a social point of view, it could also be probably the urban villages or some of those pockets as well. So there's a huge opportunity that is going to be there as the business world becomes more purpose driven and SDG becomes the guiding force.
I think one small point I usually used to add when I used to teach at the MBA institutes is that, there is a humongous amount of technical expertise, knowledge, and capacities that are enabled at the MBA level. You are a beacon of creativity and a direction that is invested on by a certain set of people, a certain set of institutions, and you have got into that. However, you should not be the follower of a job. Can you be the creator of a job? Can you be the direction in which you can create a job, create an institution, create a direction is what probably a rural direction may look like, if I'm making sense in that direction. So rather than choosing to get employed, I am choosing to make myself with the idea self-employed.
I think that's very, very important. Jamin sir, one of them is asking on the chat that, you worked with PNG. In the PNG, have you worked in the rural India? And how was your experience?
Not at all. No, I absolutely worked in the urban only. I never worked in the rural part. But today, I literally say that out of the 648 districts, I have been to 293. So I keep count of 293. So that's how I keep count of mine.
That's amazing. I'm amazed by the numbers that, you keep track of, and, traveling to 293 villages is amazing. And when, especially, it's like, you had a flavor of India and been to the different part of the country.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And nothing can relate to that. The type of experience and the type of understanding that you gain, nothing will compare to that.
Absolutely. And then I think one more added advantage that one has in working in rural India is, you are away from a typical corporate culture that, one has been running after. So you have a different set of life and you can explore a lot of opportunities. You can explore and face the real taste of India apart from the job or the work that you've been doing. So one thing is for sure that all that we need to do is change the background, right? In background, whatever music is going on doesn't matter. Yeah. So I think, thank you so much. This was really wonderful listening, both of you. And I'm quite excited and positive about the sentiments that you guys are sharing that, the time is changing and there's a lot of positivity into the market. So I'm sure in next few days or couple of months, the things will change and there is ample opportunities available for all the students. It's just that they need to be driven by their passion rather than just going by the profession. Any last advice for them or anything that you suggest them that they should, follow or look into, especially when they are concerned about joining into development sector, social sector?
I don't think so. I mean, there's any concern. I'll just close with a very interesting number. And usually I'm a number guy, so I speak in terms of numbers only. So India, if you look at it in the global context, 18% of humanity lives in India. 18% of world's humanity lives in India, and 16% of world's humanity lives in India's rural. And you still don't think that it's an opportunity? I don't know how to explain it.
Absolutely. Anirban, any last words from you?
Okay, I'd be probably more functional in my last words, and especially that many of your students must be listening, and some of them probably are still thinking. I think, with the COVID, at least with the student community, it has been, one of those, sentiments like, before, the examination, if you suddenly heard that, okay, the examination has got delayed by a week, there is a kind of joy that used to, take our heart during school days. I think this sentiment has lived with many of, us for a long time. But I think the reality is going to be out very soon. So wherever a skill enhancement program one has chosen, as a student, I think, forget about what's going to be post-COVID or what is going to be new normal.
Yeah.
Get onto the normalcy of, putting yourself through the course, putting yourself through the, skill building initiatives. So, take serious, let me say, note of all the initiatives that are on right now. Forget about the nomenclatures, whether it's a term zero or whether it's a, pre-course, session. The more you start involving yourself, the better you are going to be ready after 2 years. Otherwise, it's going to be your loss.
Absolutely.
Right. So that's something that I feel that it's very important for, especially the PG students to be very, very, careful about in the current context.
Absolutely true. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Benjamin, sir. Thank you so much, Anirban, sir. It was a pleasure having you with us today. And we look forward to hear you again. And I'm sure a lot of students got benefited out of this session.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being on this webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
you.
Take care.
And
Thank
stay
you,
safe.
everyone.